Let's talk about the best and the worst ways to learn a language. In today's video, I'm going to take 9 of the most common ways to learn a language, and I'm going to rank them from 1 to 10. There are many great ways to learn a language out there, but there are also several bad ways. So make sure you watch until the end of today's video so you know how to learn English the right way. My name is Michael Anton. I'm the founder of English at the Ready, and it's my goal to make you fluent in English. Now let's talk about the first way to learn English that is super common, and in fact, you're doing it right now. Watching YouTube. Lots of people like to turn on YouTube. Maybe you watch my videos, maybe you watch videos from other YouTubers on how to improve your English. And I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Watching YouTube is great, but it's not the best way. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Some of the pros of watching YouTube is that you can listen to real and natural pronunciation from different native speakers around the world. It's great for listening and pronunciation, and it's easy to access and it's free. That's the best part. There's so much knowledge available on YouTube for free. The problem with using YouTube to learn English is that it's mostly passive. You're just listening and you're not speaking. It's easy to get distracted, and there is a lot of information out there which can be incredibly overwhelming. It can be difficult to create a structure and to create a plan. When there's so much information out there, you get distracted and you don't know what to do next. So YouTube is great, but it's not structured. It's the same with watching movies. That's the second way to learn English that lots of people use. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10 as well. Watching movies is great. I always recommend it if you're learning a language because it's a great way of listening to real life English in real life situations. It'll improve your listening and your vocabulary, and it can be fun and motivating. If you watch a movie you really enjoy, obviously it's going to be easy to stay motivated because you're into the movie, you're enjoying it, it's entertaining. The problem with using movies to learn English is a lot like using YouTube to learn English. You have little speaking practice. It's easy to get distracted because you don't have a structure. You have a lot of different movies to choose from, and native speakers often speak incredibly quickly. They don't speak clearly, which can be a challenge if you're at the beginner level. And native speakers also use slang. Believe it or not, native speakers don't always use correct grammar or standard vocabulary when they speak. This can be confusing, especially you're just starting out, because you can form bad habits if you hear somebody using incorrect grammar. But all in all, watching movies is a great way to improve your English, and I strongly recommend it. All right, the worst way to learn a language is to use a textbook. I'm going to give this one 2 out of 10. Using a textbook is something I don't recommend. It's something you probably did in school, but it's not a strategy that is particularly effective. The language you learn in a textbook is often unnatural. I remember when I learned German in school, I studied a bit of German in school for about a year. We used a textbook from the 90s. And the textbook that we used was out of date. The language, the slang, the words they used in the textbook were not used in modern German. They were about 20, 30 years out of date. So language is constantly changing, and if you use an old textbook, the language you read in the textbook might not be up to date. Again, you get no speaking practice with a textbook. And textbooks can honestly be pretty boring. Textbooks are good, however, because they give you structure, they give you a plan, they give you a clear way of improving your English. They're good for grammar reference if you need to check something about grammar. And they're also useful if you're preparing for an exam like the IELTS, the TOEFL, the CELPIP, or any other standardized test. So I don't want to say textbooks are all bad, but they're certainly not my preferred way of learning a language. So that's why I'm going to give this one 2 out of 10. The next one is something you've probably tried: using apps to learn a language. Now this depends on the app. Some apps are better than others, but on the whole, I'm going to give this one 5 out of 10. You see, apps are great because you can use them every day. You're on your phone anyway, so you can easily open up an app and practice a language. They're good for basic vocabulary. There are a lot of good apps out there that will help you build vocabulary. And some apps are even what we call gamified. So it's like playing a game. It keeps you motivated, it keeps you engaged, and sometimes even addicted to the app. The problem with apps is that they're often disconnected from real English. Sometimes they suffer the same problem as a textbook might, where they don't use natural English. Again, this depends entirely on the app. Some are certainly better than others, but there is a tendency for apps to use somewhat formal or rigid English, which doesn't necessarily reflect the English we use every day. Most apps don't offer much speaking practice. Some people like to speak to AI, which we'll talk about in a moment, but this is actually not something I recommend. And lastly, apps can actually create false confidence. If you've used an app to learn English, you might think you're fluent, but then you go into the real world and you have a conversation with real people and you realize you're actually not that good. So apps can definitely give you a false sense of confidence and make you think you're better than you actually are. Again, depends on the app, but on the whole, I don't recommend using apps as your primary strategy to learn a language. So I'm going to give this one 5 out of 10. Next up is ChatGPT. I'm sure you've used ChatGPT, not necessarily for English, but for other things, maybe at work or at school. I don't actually like ChatGPT for learning a language. And when I say ChatGPT, I mean any of the standard AI tools like Grok, Gemini, or Claude. These are great because they give you instant feedback. You just have to talk to the AI and you'll get feedback immediately. They can actually explain grammar clearly. ChatGPT is pretty good for grammar. You can ask it follow-up questions, and it's available at any time. You just have to open up your computer or your phone and you can pull up ChatGPT. The problem is talking to an AI is totally different than talking to a real human. AI won't prepare you for real conversations. The only way to prepare yourself for real conversations is through speaking practice with real people. Another issue with ChatGPT and other AI tools is that it makes it dangerously easy to overthink grammar. If you're constantly talking to an AI, you're constantly asking it to evaluate your grammar, you might find you place too much emphasis on grammar, when in reality, your main focus should always be speaking. Remember, the purpose of language is not necessarily perfect grammar, which is important, but the purpose of language is communication. And that means speaking with real people, getting your ideas across and communicating with them. On a similar note, when you speak to ChatGPT, I know some people use the voice feature on the app. I've used this for other languages when I'm learning other languages, but I don't feel the same level of pressure when I speak to ChatGPT than when I speak with a real person. And sometimes pressure is a good thing because it pushes you, it motivates you. If things are too easy, you're probably doing something wrong. You always want to challenge yourself a little bit. You want to get out of your comfort zone because that's where real progress happens. So I'm going to give ChatGPT and other AI tools a 4 out of 10. They can help, but they shouldn't be used on their own. If you are looking for a strategy to improve your English and to speak with real people, native speakers and non-native speakers alike, we offer several online programs with the goal of helping you speak English more confidently. If you want to apply, just click the link in the description below to learn more, to submit an application, and if we can help you, we'll be in touch. Now, earlier we talked about movies and YouTube. I also want to talk about music. Music is a great way to improve your English, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 because it's not enough. Same problem as YouTube, same problem as watching movies. Music can help you improve, but the issue is that the lyrics are sometimes hard to understand. Songwriters don't always use standard English. They might use slang, they might use non-standard forms of the language, which can be useful to know, but I always encourage starting with the most standard form of the language and then expanding out into slang, into idioms, into more regional forms of English once you get more advanced. Again, you have no speaking practice if you're just listening to music, and some songs can be difficult to understand, especially if you're a beginner, because you're not just listening to the language, you're listening to the rhythm, you're listening to the pitch, the melody, the harmony. There's a lot going on. So it can be hard to focus specifically on the words. That being said, listening to music is great because it can actually improve your pronunciation and it can help you understand the rhythm of the language. Every language has a rhythm. English does. All other languages do as well, and they're often slightly different. So if you can understand the rhythm of the English language, you can improve your accent, you can improve your pronunciation. It will also help you understand native English speakers. Listening to music is great because it can help you remember words and phrases. When a song is stuck in your head, the lyrics will also be stuck in your head. So naturally, this is a great way of memorizing vocabulary and memorizing idioms, slang, and other turns of phrase. Listening to music is also motivating because music is enjoyable and entertaining. If you enjoy listening to music, you'll be more likely to listen to it. And if you're more likely to listen to it, you're more likely to improve your English. That being said, for the reasons I described earlier, listening to music is helpful, but it's not enough. So I'm still going to give it a 5 out of 10. Now for the next method, I want you to think back to how you learned English in school. A lot of you probably learned English in elementary school, secondary school, middle school, maybe even university. But the way you learned English was probably not the best. You see, most schools around the world use something called the grammar translation method. This is a very old-fashioned way of learning a language, and it's changing a bit. Schools are starting to move away from this approach, but it's still very common, and it's probably how you learned English. You see, the grammar translation method involves taking a text in English or in another language and translating it word for word. If you use the grammar translation method, you're learning English in your language instead of directly in English. The teacher probably speaks your language, and the class is probably conducted mostly in your language. Now, this is good if you're a beginner, but if you're at the intermediate or the advanced level, I don't recommend learning English in your language. I recommend learning English entirely in English because the grammar translation method encourages you to translate directly in your head and doesn't encourage you to think directly in English. It also doesn't encourage you to speak. It encourages you to translate. It's great for reading and writing, but it's not that good for speaking. It's also decent for grammar because it can help teach you very abstract grammatical concepts, and it's probably familiar to you. It's probably a method you have used in the past. That being said, it has a lot of problems. It's not a very natural way to learn English. So I'm going to give the grammar translation method a 4 out of 10. Not very good. The grammar translation method is the old way of learning English, and it was commonly used in the 18th and 19th centuries. Around the beginning of the 20th century, a new method of language learning began to be developed. This was called the direct method, or the natural method. The natural method is when you learn a language entirely in that language. It's called the natural method because this is how children learn language. They learn by seeing, by hearing, by looking around, and by interacting with the world in that language. Now, I really like the direct method. I think it's a great method, especially if you're at the intermediate level or the advanced level. I recommend learning English in English. It's very natural. It focuses strongly on speaking and pronunciation, and you learn grammar by actually using it and by seeing it used, not by memorization. That being said, it can be confusing at first, and it requires a very skilled teacher because it's difficult to explain an English concept in English. It's also slower for abstract grammatical concepts because it's harder to connect certain grammatical concepts with the real world. Now, the direct method is something you can't really do on your own. It's something that happens in the classroom. So maybe you've taken a course or a program in the past which used this method. It's common for teachers to make gestures to teach vocabulary. It's common to show images. It's common to show videos and other media. And the whole point of the direct method is to make learning English as natural as possible and to avoid using the student's native language. I would rate this method an 8 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's a great way of learning a language because it's natural. It imitates the way you learned your first language as a child. And if you're looking for an English course, I would strongly recommend you look for one that uses the natural method. Now, that being said, I'm only going to give the natural method an 8 out of 10 because it's not the best way to learn English. The best way to learn English is not by using one single method, but by combining all the methods we talked about today. Use an app, watch movies, read books, listen to music, attend class, speak with real people. By combining all these methods, you will be able to benefit from all of them. You'll be able to balance your speaking, your grammar, your vocabulary, and your listening skills. If you learn better using one method, you'll be able to focus a bit more on that. If you learn better using another method, you can focus more on that. It's very flexible and it's closest to real life English use. The problem with this and with learning English generally on your own is it requires a very good structure. There's so much information out there. There are so many different ways of learning English. You have to find what's best for you, and you need to come up with a structure. Without guidance and without support, it can feel overwhelming. And just like any skill, it requires discipline and consistency. That's why if you are looking to improve your English this year, we have several online programs which are designed to help you improve your speaking, your listening, your grammar, your vocabulary, your pronunciation, your accent, and so much more. If you would like to apply for our online programs, just click the link in the description below. You can submit an application, tell us a bit about your situation and why you want to improve your English, and if we can help you, we'll be in touch. If you enjoyed today's video, let me know in the comments. Let me know what strategies you're using to improve your English and what strategies you prefer. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to English at the Ready here on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, some strategies are better than others, but there isn't only one way to learn a language. I recommend you combine as many strategies as possible and you double down on what works and you remove what doesn't work. Everybody's different. Everybody learns differently. Combining different strategies and seeing what works for you personally is the only way you're going to improve.